The average player will probably only spend a couple of seconds really meditating on this decision. Maybe a full minute if you're particularly introspective. I let the thread sit on it for 48 hours. It turns out there are rather a lot of perspectives to have on it. For example, much was made of Hope's comment that she shouldn't watch this. But it's highly arguable whether this was a true expression of her agency that we should respect, or a reflexive one, a product of her upbringing, that we should encourage her, gently of course, to revisit. The pragmatic concerns raised by Cooper also have people divided. There's the obvious argument that showing Hope the video may have an adverse effect on her mental state. However, we also can't rule out the possibility that not knowing the full contents of the video, or even knowing that it was kept from her, may have a similar effect. Some wonder if we have any right to hide the truth, and answer that obviously we do not, because that would make us no different from Treglazov. While others argue that our intent to do right by Hope is what gives us that right. Still others question if there's even anything to gain from watching this video that will justify all of this debate. Through one perspective or another, we decided, narrowly, that we were going to show Hope the tape.
Senor Octavo, just the man I want to see.
Hello, Derringer. To what do I owe this pleasure?
Good book.
It is a classic.
Not just a classic. I mean, it's actually good.
How can I help you?
Why does this guy, Edmond Dantes?
Dante.
Dante, right. Why does this guy tell Maximilian that his girl is dead?
For revenge.
No, Maximilian's his friend.
Yes, you are. You're right, of course.
Damn it, man. You have read this, haven't you?
Of course, yes. I meant, it has been a while.
Why does Dantes put his friend through so much misery?
I think the point is to teach a lesson. You cannot know happiness unless you have been exposed to tragedy.
Can't know hope without despair.
I believe that is it, yes.
Kind of like the pre-cows. They don't know up from down, good from bad. They got no perspective because they don't have a clue about the outside. Or do they?
This is an intriguing intellectual exercise, Derringer, but it is late and
Why'd you give the kids the Poison Manifesto?
I did not.
What do you do in that hidden room downstairs?
What room?
Think we can't hear that god-awful music bleeding through the walls?
I just read and...
Reading Sega's trash!
I have seen it, yes, but I would never act
Conspire against us.
No.
You were planning to help the children escape.
No, Derringer,
What the hell do you think you're doing?
I can't watch this anymore.
I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't, as some of you might be, just a little bit disappointed at the contents of this video. I thought that perhaps it failed to fully live up to the expectations set by the dilemma framed around it. In retrospect though, I think that would be to overthink the nature of these things. All the game really wants is for us to think, whether for a moment's introspection or 48 hours of forum posts, about what's right. Now, mind the ludonarrative dissonance.
I'll take this.
I don't know if I agree with your decision to show the girl that horrifying video. Still, maybe it's best she knows the whole truth.
Maybe is exactly right. For better or worse, nothing really hinges on this decision except your conscience if you're into that sort of thing.
Senor Octavo?
Un momento. Buenos días.
You Senor Octavo?
Sí, I am Luis Octavo, yes.
My name's Quinn Derringer. My employer contacted you.
Yes, of course. The mystery man who pays me twice what I ask. Did he receive the books yet?
He did. And he thanks you. He'd like to thank you personally.
Of course, tell him to come in at any time.
He's not in Buenos Aires. Is your passport in order?
My passport? What is this about?
My employer has some more work for you.
Mystery man? What sort of work?
That's the mystery.
Well, where would I go? Oh, impossible. I cannot close my shop.
My employer thinks you can. He'll pay whatever you ask.
He doesn't even know my price.
But he knows you have one. You got a number in your head, senor?
I do?
Good. Double it. Where's your passport at?
Oh, no. Wait a minute. How long will I be gone?
Just a few days. I promise.
By now, we're probably pretty accustomed to the fact that République is not the kind of game that will answer a question without raising at least one more in its place. This whole chapter has been about the librarian, and even though it's not quite over yet, we know enough to pretty much piece together the entirety of his arc as a character. We know the broad strokes of his life, what he was like as a person, and how he came to be involved with metamorphosis. And how, in the grand tradition of very cynical fiction, he was simply too good a person to be allowed to live. We also, if you were paying attention, have picked up a brand new main quest breadcrumb to follow, so that was nice of him as well. So all of this is well and good, until you stop and wonder, what exactly was the librarian doing here, really? What is Treglazov's interest in books?
Cassette.
It's just one more for the pile of what exactly is going on in Metamorphosis.
We're gonna get in trouble, Weep.
No, we're not. He would never turn us over to Mireille.
He might if he caught us smoking his cigarettes.
Don't drag on it so long.
How do you know about this stuff?
I read a book.
One of Senor Octavo's books?
No, it was the manifesto. He has a whole chapter dedicated to smoking.
You're making fun of me.
What the hell's up with that bird?
Weep is not completely taking the piss here. Treglazov has not in fact dedicated an entire chapter of his manifesto to smoking, but he does make a couple of references to it. He says, and I quote, "Selecting the cigars for the night required discriminating taste. The occasion demanded a flavour robust enough to celebrate control of the executive branch, yet humble enough to waft into the background in case of defeat. Whoever chose them understood 20th century bipartisan democracy better than any politician." If you're wondering, the context of that quote is long and waffly and heavily obscured by Zega's annotations, but from what I was able to piece together, Treglazov claims to have been a key player in the United States presidential elections of 1988. Naturally, he worked behind the scenes to ensure the victory of George Bush Sr., while publicly appearing to support his competitor.
What's yours is mine. Dear Senor Octavo, thank you so very much for giving me a copy of Labyrinths by Borgia. Each of the stories was fascinating. I especially enjoyed the one called The Library of Babel. It made me think of you, surrounded by all those books, overwhelmed with the infinite number of ideas they contain, and left wondering which books contain the truth and which are false. Is it true you knew Borgia and discussed literature with him? If so, I am positively envious. Thank you again for the stimulating read. Your friend, 390H.
The Library of Babel posits the existence of a collection of books, which between them account for every possible ordering of every single character in a given language. Needless to say, a lot of these books would be gibberish, but hidden among them would be every book, every actual book that had ever been written or that ever would be written. And of course, every very slightly erroneous version of those books. Rather than expound on the thematic relevance of that though, we're going to look at the map and see that we have a new plot objective. It is, of course, the hidden room mentioned in the librarian's last video. It has, of course, been on the map all along, and if you're one of this game's more inquisitive players, it probably irritated you incredibly. Anyway, speaking of books and gibberish, here's more of Treglazov's reviews.
Kafka's Paine is best read as a comedian librarian. For Paine, constitutions come from rights, charters create chaos, and monarchs require oversight against corruption from all whose interests fall short of the state's well-being. We are beyond constitutions, charters, even monarchs. We are communication itself. These so-called rights of man must not radicalize anyone into thinking otherwise.
I think, given everything we've just seen and heard and talked about, that the lunacy of this take is thrown into even sharper relief than usual.
Sputnik, sweetheart, and its protagonist, K. A dutiful man who accepts his place in the pecking order. Nothing distasteful thus far, yet Murakami insists on criticizing the social mold that makes a man valuable at all. Effective coercion works within, but knowing so much is not in our citizens' best interests. Box this up, librarian.
There are self-styled intellectuals today who still continue to insist on arguing about the intrinsic value of social hierarchies. It's really quite fascinating how prescient this game managed to be. Now, I seem to have lost track of the placement of new games in the list, so excuse me while I skip over a few seconds of blind clicking.
A retro styling of the horror genre. You wake up in a strange house with no memory of how you got there. More troubling, you quickly discover a dead body nearby, and clues in the room seem to implicate you. The end is rather controversial, but I thought it was excellent. A word of warning. Home is scary, so keep a change of pants nearby.
Every version of République includes home, but I still think that they missed a trick by not putting in the PS4 version the even more horrifying title PlayStation Home. Anyway, we're done up here, and Hope doesn't seem to be in too bad a shape, so let's go see what the librarian was hiding. With the OmniView version 2.0 in hand, and a few well-chosen guards tased out of existence, we now pretty much have the run of the entire library area. We haven't yet fully explored every available surrounding, but in terms of remaining threats, the only two left, at least threats to us in the video game sense rather than threats to Hope in the existential sense, are our long-patrolling guard friends Mr. CVX and Mr. Papazian. And believe me, before we're allowed out of here, we will have one more occasion to have to deal with their particular brand of bullshit. Other than that though, our only real concern right now is pathfinding. Oh, no, wait, right. I also shamefully missed a scannable piece of intel, like the terrible LPer that I am. Let's amend that.
The Overseer runs this library like a wild animal preserve. Look, but don't touch.
The game does at least acknowledge how weird it is that all these terrible evil books are gathered here.
I hear music, do you?
It's also nice of the game to acknowledge, for the second time if you are paying attention, that yes, the main room of the library is in fact permeated with the slightly muffled sounds of piano music. Now, naturally, our objective here is right in the middle of one of the very few places in this area where multiple guards' patrol paths intersect. I expect there to be one guard already here, and of course there is. So now I set about looking to find where CVX is. Have you realised my mistake yet? Nope, can't see him. You'd think he'd be showing up on the X-ray. He's not at the other end of his patrol either. I mean, obviously we'd have run right into him already if he was here. At this point it dawns on me. This guy's wearing an ARC suit. We tased the guy who normally patrols here. Welp, this worked out pretty well. I'm clever, I swear. It's at this point that I learned something new about the game.
That's more than I can carry.
If you tase a guard who has in his inventory something that you can't collect, like pepper spray, it will remain on the ground long after his body phases out of existence for whatever reason that happens.
This must be a hidden room that Derek mentioned. Someone told us.
But Senior Octavo...
Shh, un momento. Go ahead, 933W.
You can't stay here.
I'm too old to be tilting at windmills.
But you don't know what the headmaster is capable of.
Sadly, I know all too well. History abounds with men like the Overseer.
He will kill you. Recalibrate you.
Were I 30 years younger, things would be different. I would hew to the line that Zager has drawn. But today, I am merely an old academic with failing eyesight. I doubt I can even see the line.
I'll come back for you. For all of you.
Why, 933W, I find your compassion extraordinary.
Call me Weep. I'm not a number anymore.
In conclusion, full marks for anti-fascist action, but a big fat 0 on OBSEC. It's like Derringer said, the music was a dead giveaway.
This is no mere piece of paper. It is an escape plan. A blueprint for a key. A master key. Capable of unlocking any number of doors inside this facility. But that is not all. In the garden, there is a gate to the outside world. A gate to freedom. This key, I am told, will unlock that gate.
This may come in handy.
I'm going to clarify right now that this key will only in fact unlock one door inside the facility. It is, however, the door we care about.
A blueprint of the Overseer's master key. The librarian suggested this key is required to escape from the facility. I know of a 3D printer located in archives. With this blueprint, the girl can manufacture a key.
You'd be forgiven for not immediately remembering where the archives are and needing to check the map. And that's okay, I pretty much walked straight past them and directed everybody to ignore it. It's at the back of the very useful stairwell, and the one remaining area in the library that we have yet to explore. I could tase him. I really could. It'd be so easy. Not just mechanically, even logistically. It'd be really easy to replace the one taser that we'd need to effortlessly chump him. But no. I still insist on doing this bit properly. Anyway, here's the archives door.
Can't get through here without the correct thumbprint.
Oh right, the thumbprint. Remember the thumbprint? This is what we need it for, and why we have to go to the headmaster's office before coming here. There's one detail about the archives that you'll probably notice immediately, and another important detail that you definitely will not notice immediately or even suspect at first, but will very quickly come to figure out. These two details are that security here consists of a number of colour-coded lasers with toggle switches, and absolutely does not consist of any patrolling guards. If you walk through a laser, a very disappointing sound plays and nothing really happens that you can immediately see, but believe me, there are implications to walking through the lasers that we'll get to. The obvious upside of this setup is that it's pretty easy to explore and get a feel for the layout of the place, which will be important for getting through here properly. There are, of course, a few things to collect here other than our plot tokens. Like the last book, for example. Another big advantage of this place's gimmicks is that you can run with more or less no consequences. That's nice. Hope, pick up the damn book.
I'll take this.
Thank you, Hope. One thing I don't appreciate too much about this downstairs area is that between the multiple staircases, the multiple entrances, and the multiple cameras, and the long and winding and mostly identical scenery, it's pretty easy to get turned around in here. And I had absolutely no idea where the door was. There's one other problem with this door, which is that it's closed. This door shouldn't be closed. I need to get through here to get the last collectible.
It's locked.
The door's closed because we fucked up and tripped a laser. I say fucked up, and I'm really half joking here. I absolutely did deliberately trip the laser in order to show off what happens and what you have to do about it. I did not, however, realise that doing so would lock that particular door. So I guess it's a mistake anyway.
I can't carry anymore.
I'd also be lying if I said I didn't slightly regret not tasing that guard earlier. Anyway, here's the deal with the lasers. If you trip one, a bunch of doors will close, locking you off from all the exits and also that one collectible. In order to rectify this, you'll have to trek all the way back up here and press that button and do everything over again. The upshot of all of this is that this area is basically a puzzle. All of the lasers come in color-coded pairs and come with a color-coded switch that toggles one of them off and the other one on. You have to walk through the ones that are off, until one gets in your way, find the switch that toggles it. Not always the easiest thing because there are 2 floors and a lot of cameras. And toggle it until you have a path again. Honestly, they probably could have made this a lot more irritating. But they didn't. So that's nice. Anyway, now we can get in here and collect our prize. Episode 1 was a very strange outlier, in that its final cassette could only be collected in Episode 2. The game won't be pulling that trick again. We're now able to complete all of our collections in the relevant episodes, like we just did. We've collected every single tape, every book, and every video game in this episode. Go us. Not only is this area not particularly dickish, it's actually oddly compliant. I mean, we came down here to collect a collectible, and in doing so, we've kind of just stumbled onto a golden path through here. We've tripped, like, what, 2 switches total? And we're here. It's nice when these things work out. Derringer's winning personality shining through again. Derringer makes himself out to be a brute, and he pretty much is one, but as we've come to appreciate, he's not without a cunning streak. And we know that he has read at least 1 book in his lifetime, and appreciated it.
What a strange looking machine. I wonder if this is what the blueprint's for. Is there a way to turn it back on?
Well, of course it's not that easy. There is, however, a suspicious room right behind this one, so, you know. Oh, and there's these suspicious glowing orange cables. Yeah, maybe this will be that easy.
Can you hack this open?
What is the point of this obstacle? Hope. 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 Well, that was an easy diversion. Hope.
Alright, now I think we need to configure the blueprint.
Time for a crash course in how 3D printing definitely absolutely works. Just like with real 3D modelling software, the object in question has been divided into roughly 100 fragments, each of which has been randomly assigned to one of 3 groups. The objects in the group, though geometrically locked in position with each other, have then been randomly pitched, yawed and rolled into new positions. We can rectify this situation by something our perspective into something alignment until the pieces for some reason just lock into place, and then we rotate them until somehow everything just works out. I don't know, this is not a good puzzle. I have no idea what is even the thinking behind this conception of a representation of 3D printing. Also, if you take too long to do it, and by too long I mean like maybe an entire minute, you're just given the fuck it, solve it for me button, which I heartily recommend pressing because there is absolutely no penalty for doing so, and this is not a particularly good puzzle by any stretch of the imagination. Seriously, what is this? Why do I have to do this? Video games. How did the librarian get that blueprint? Why does it even exist?
We did it. This key's identical to the one the headmaster used in his office. Let's go there now.
The girl has the key. Let's get her to the surface. Head back to the overseer's office.
Before we formally dispense with episode 2, we've got one last book to hear the headmaster's disjointed opinions on.
A caterwaul for pulp and glue fetishists. Those bleeding hearts decry book burning, yet fail to cross-check their e-readers. We can alter the digital version with profound sleight of hand. No smoke, no ash, but the effect is the same. And all at a temperature more manageable than Fahrenheit 451. I'll spare you the irony of burning this one, librarian. Technology has done your job for you.
Yup, literary censorship no longer literally requires burning books, therefore the message of Fahrenheit 451 is null and void. That logic checks out. And with that, it's time for us to check out as well. You might notice through all this sped up footage that the lasers have helpfully all turned themselves off in honour of our escape. Oh, come on. Oh no, wait, he's going the other way. Never mind. Our decision earlier to tase the guard who patrols outside the headmaster's office pays off again. Not that it would have been a huge problem, but you know, every little bit. I don't think we ever addressed the monitor array here. It's showing a series of feeds from all the cameras throughout the facility, and pride of place on the biggest screen is Hope's bedroom. There's that familiar feeling of needing to take a shower again. There's also that maze in a box, which I'm sure is representative of something. Anyway, Now that we've 3D printed a master key, we can remotely open the door.
Derringer and the headmaster went this way to the surface.
And if you guessed that the heavily secured secret mystery door would lead us right back to the atrium from the very beginning of the game, then I guess you win some sort of prize. I mean, I can appreciate the layout of the place just from a video game perspective, but it is one of the most nakedly video gamey aspects of this whole thing. Running down those stairs unlocks those gates, which literally gives us a shortcut.
There's an elevator on the other side of the atrium. It's probably the girl's best chance for getting to the surface.
Except it turns out you don't actually have to run down the stairs to unlock the gates, you just have to go to the same XY plane as where the gates are and they'll unlock from above. I didn't know that, of course, so I wasted a couple seconds coming down here.
It's been a long time since I allowed someone to speak to me this way, librarian.
I will not shy away from telling you what I see. You are the dark ruler of this world, Overseer.
This isn't a world, yet. Merely a small corner of it. And the darkness you perceive persists only because you refuse to open your eyes. Now, if you will excuse me, I must tend to more pressing matters in the terminus. You don't have access to this part of the complex, so I will bid you farewell. Unless... would you care to see what we've been working on?
Not in the least. It is unreal to me. If I cannot hold it in my hands and smell the history in its pages, it is not there. I don't know what you do, and I don't care. But I do know fascism when I see it. I am well versed in the struggles against it. And I know that you will ultimately fail, as all fascists have failed.
Watch your step.
I will not! You must know this. You're nearly as old as me, but still so naive in the ways of the world. Control is illusory, Overseer. Your network, whatever you call it, I call it a trap. It will not catch everyone. And the ones who slip through it will regroup and stand against you someday. You think because of your fancy computers and your expensive surveillance that you can succeed with those who rose to power in the 20th century failed? You are naive. Control is a lie.
Control is the linchpin of a safe society. We fall apart without it. Now, as you can't seem to control your own emotions, librarian, I'm confident you don't recognize a need for control in society. Good day, sir.
Look man, I just want to take a bunch of children and raise them with no knowledge of the outside world and get them to worship me and perv on them from time to time. Why you gotta get so angry, man? Why won't you debate me? Anyway, with that, we are formally done here. Episode 2 completion is at 89% because collecting all of the cameras continues to be an enormous pain in the arse with absolutely no good justification for doing it.
An elevator. It must lead to the way out. So many buttons. The ninth floor. The top. The surface. No. Why are we stopping? Can you do something here?
I've been looking for you.
No! No!
Calm down. Calm down, or I'll have to tase you.
Help! Help!
Welp. See you in episode 3.
citizens of Metamorphosis, words fail me tonight. I cannot rightfully describe the bleak, chasmal longing that echoes through my heart. Our beloved librarian, Senor Luis Octavo, has passed away. Derringer paid him a visit earlier this evening, hoping to discuss his exciting new role as cultural attaché. Instead, he found the Senor lying prone on his office floor, his heart failing. Ever valiant, Derringer sprang into action. He tried desperately to save the poor man. Sadly, it was too late. The librarian succumbed to the great unknown, cradled in Derringer's arms. But in a final act of appreciation, his words, I'm sorry. His last words, as he looked up at Derringer, were, "Thank you." As I'm sure has been reported, Senor Octavo and I did not always see eye to eye. Still, I made it a point to listen to his thoughtful and honest assessments of our fair République. He was especially critical of our prized surveillance infrastructure. I regret that I wasn't ever able to persuade him of its importance. I learned at an early age to never speak ill of the dead. I must hold my tongue now. But I will say this, for it pains me too greatly to keep it to myself. Had our security been more robust, Luis Octavo would still be alive. A camera is an asset to our superior way of life. But what use is a camera without a good pair of eyes to monitor the feed? Had someone seen the librarian collapse, they could have reached him in time. I am confident the arrival will help improve security in the future, and thus assure us greater safety going forward. Thank you for listening. And good night, librarian. We mourn your loss, but we celebrate your life with an equal passion.